Hello, you join me here at Crewe Station. Now 2 years ago I made my first ever vlog style video from here at Crewe to Stoke-on-Trent, looking at the 3 intermediate stations. 2 years later and I'm back, looking at the facts which you may not have known about regarding the stations between Crewe and Stoke-on-Trent, and what is known as the North Staffordshire line or the Crewe to Derby line. This line connects Crewe with Stoke-on-Trent through to Derby, with East Midlands Railway running a base hourly service between Crewe and Derby up to Lincoln. However, London North Western Railway and Northern also serve the stations along the route. And the line also plays a role in not only being a small little regional line connecting several towns to several smaller towns, but also is a vital diversion route for the West Coast Mainline, Europe's busiest mixed route railway. In case something goes wrong on there, this line provides a vital connection between Euston and the north, with Avanti West Coast and Cross Country both using this line on occasions. The line opened from Crewe to Derby in 1848 with 11 stations in total. There were many more, however, these have since closed. In today's video we're looking at 5 of them between Crewe and Stoke-on-Trent. So let's look at the secrets of the North Staffordshire line between Crewe and Stoke-on-Trent.
So yes, the Crewe to Derby line originally opened in 1848 and forms a part of the West Coast Mainline between Crewe and Stoke-on-Trent, the part we're focusing on today. The line hasn't seen too much change during its nearly 200 years of operation, although there have been several station closures. Services have run for a long time between Crewe and Derby, and then onwards towards Nottingham, Lincoln or Skegness, using primarily diesel multiple units. Services were extended up to Manchester Airport during the early Central Trains days, but were reverted back to terminating at Crewe due to poor punctuality, while further performance-related issues resulted in services being terminated short at Derby from late 2005. The section from Crewe to Kidsgrove station has been electrified since 2003, when the West Coast Mainline was upgraded, although the line between Alsager and Crewe remained a single track. During this period, stations along the line temporarily closed until 2005, except Etruria station near Stoke, which we'll talk more on later. Service patterns by East Midlands Trains and later East Midlands Railway have remained roughly hourly throughout the privatisation period, with services being extended to Nottingham, Newark Castle and now, since December 2025, Lincoln, taking just under 3 hours between Crewe and Lincoln. As mentioned at Crewe, London North Western Railway and Northern both use the Crewe to Stoke-on-Trent line. We'll talk about their operations in more detail later, but it's worth noting that London North Western Railway are the only operator to call at all the stations between Crewe and Stoke-on-Trent, which we'll be looking at today. Anyway, time to look at the larger station in terms of passenger numbers and services, Crewe.
So yes, now let's focus a bit on Crewe. Crewe needs no introduction. It is probably one of the most important railway stations anywhere in the United Kingdom. It is a major junction station here on the West Coast Mainline, Europe's busiest mixed route railway. The station here opened in 1837 by the Grand Junction Railway, built in fields near the village of Crewe, which had 70 inhabitants at the time, and also built pretty close to Crewe Hall, which was named after the Crewe family. Crewe was opened on the Grand Junction Railway, which linked the London and Birmingham Railway with the Liverpool and Manchester Railway at Warrington, enabling a link between the country's 4 largest cities for the first ever time, with Crewe being chosen as a station, as the local landowners at Nantwich and Whitchurch rejected there being a big junction station in their back garden. Little did they know, they probably made a huge mistake, as Crewe would soon become the heart of Britain's Western Rail line. The station soon became a major junction, with a direct link to Manchester, negating the need to change with Warrington, being constructed, and then a line to Chester being open a year or so after. Further lines such as the Trent Valley line on the West Coast Mainline opened in 1847, with our line to Derby opening in 1848, linking Crewe to Stoke. The line through Nantwich to Shrewsbury and on to Cardiff opened in 1858, while a number of other smaller lines, which have since closed, also linking Crewe, such as the Whitchurch and Tattenhall line, which closed in 1963. The station here at Crewe isn't the original 1837 station. In fact, the current station was built in 1849 by the London and North Western Railway due to the rapid expansion of Crewe, and the former station being much too small. It originally only had 2 platforms. The station was originally north of Nantwich Road and had to be moved south, having 2 large island platforms when being rebuilt. It was then rebuilt again in 1867, with much of the original architecture from this 1867 reconstruction remaining. Historical England have described this architecture as, and I quote, one of the best pieces of mid-19th century platform architecture designed anywhere on the London and North Western Railway. And this includes that lovely brick wall which stands behind me. It is a rare survivor of a station building in this period, especially a major junction station. The town of Crewe was built around Crewe. It is a railway town and wouldn't have existed without the station being built. It is home to the oldest station hotel, the Crewe Arms Hotel, which dated from 1838, but was rebuilt in 1880. The town of Crewe developed from 1842, when the Grand Junction Railway moved much of its locomotive works from Liverpool to Crewe, which forced much of the town's construction to commence to house the railway workers, which had to move to the town. Since then, the station has seen a lot of growth and then contraction. The now West Coast Mainline runs through Crewe, and this is a major junction on the West Coast Mainline towards Manchester, Liverpool and the north towards Scotland, as well as services towards London Euston via the Trent Valley Line or via Birmingham, and also the line to Stoke-on-Trent. Despite investment into the West Coast Mainline in the 1950s to modernise it and electrify it, Crewe's grandeur has declined, and it is a shadow of its former self, as seen by the dilapidated canopies and abandoned western side of the station. The station entrance is now a 1985 pretty bland building with 5 platforms removed during this time, taking the total number of platforms from 17 to 12. Recent investment has helped though, including a new station entrance opening in 2014 and the announcement of HS2 coming to Crewe on the line to Manchester, with new platforms going to be built west of the station where the old platforms used to be. However, this was cancelled in October 2023 and the future of HS2 north of Lichfield is a bit unknown. Currently, Crewe sees Avanti West Coast services to Euston, Liverpool, Chester, Holyhead, Manchester, Birmingham and Edinburgh. London North Western services to Liverpool, Birmingham, Stafford and Euston. Transport for Wales services to Chester, Wrexham, Manchester and Cardiff. East Midlands Railway services to Derby and on to Lincoln. And Northern services to Manchester Piccadilly. And from mid-2026, the new Lumo West Coast operator now serves Crewe. Caledonian Sleeper also serves Crewe, as does Cross Country on rare occasions, and Crewe holds the record for the joint most amount of train operating companies operating at any one station. The station has 12 platforms, with the current platform that I'm on, platform 12, being added in 1902, which also included another 4 platforms, which were also added at the same time. However, as aforementioned, those platforms were removed in 1985, which leaves platform 12 a bit of the stub platform away from the rest of the station. Of course, I can't mention Crewe without talking about the Crewe Heritage Centre, which opened in July 1987, making it very close to being 40 years old. The Heritage Centre is home to a lot of old trains which used to operate in and around Crewe and the West Coast Mainline, including the Advanced Passenger Train, which was the first tilting train on Britain's railways. The Heritage Centre sits on the original site of the Crewe Locomotive Works, and is a huge museum dedicated to the railways. Crewe Works has created some of the most iconic trains in and around Britain, and I actually have an original plaque from an old Mark III driving van trailer which was constructed here in Crewe. The last trains built were the Class 91s in 1991. However, Alstom have a train care facility here where they work on overhaul and maintenance alongside a Reavers train care depot. HS2's new bogies are supposed to be made here in Crewe, but that is a bit of an unknown, and they will also be maintained here, maybe, I doubt it now. Direct Rail Services also has a depot here alongside Freightliner, who have their depot at Basford Hall. Locomotive Services Limited, which run like heritage trains on main lines, have their main depot and offices here. Crewe Station is known for its quite grand architecture. It has a pub on the platform. It's also known for Crewe Alexandra, which is literally like just behind me over there. You can see it from the station. Mornflake, which are the oat porridge manufacturers, they have their headquarters here in Crewe, and they make and manufacture porridge and oats here in Crewe. And Crewe is home to some grand old signal boxes as well, which are, I believe there's one north and one south, which you go into, you can see when you're coming in on the train. The station itself is, well, I like Crewe. It gets a lot of trains, so it's great for, you always see train spotters here, but it just feels a little bit dilapidated now. It feels as though it could do with a little bit of TLC. There's canopies which don't have roofs over them, they're all like rusted and old. It feels a little bit run down, and I feel as though, you know, with some investment you could turn Crewe back into a really glorious, magnificent station. It definitely has the architecture to be one of the nicest stations in Britain, but unfortunately it just doesn't have that investment that it deserves. Maybe that can change. Maybe if HS2 ever does come up here, that will change. There were talks about completely rebuilding the station, actually, making it, I think, slightly north of the station currently, making it a massive brand new junction station for HS2, but those plans got dropped. So who knows what the future of Crewe will be. Hopefully one day HS2 trains stop here, because that would be great for the town. It's sort of gone down, of course. Deindustrialisation has meant that Crewe does not play a major role like it once did. Especially for the railways. It's a big railway junction, but you know, there's not a lot of manufacturing which is left here, especially manufacturing of trains, which is a shame. However, it is now time to go on the Crewe to Stoke-on-Trent line.
But before we go to Alsager, I wanted to point out some quirky things I also found at Crewe, such as this old Virgin Train sign, which survives advertising a bike repair facility, or the old British Rail Midland era off indicators, which still work, or an original rail track plaque from the main road rebuild in 1995, or this original 1863 water fountain with a dog water bowl beneath, or this Crewe Modernization Works plaque, or a special room for those who get stressed when travelling by train, and finally, this artwork of Crewe made from plastic lids.
So yeah, let's go to Alsager station, the first station in today's video out of Crewe. Right, hello and welcome to Alsager, the first station when you leave Crewe on the Crewe to Derby line. This station does have two platforms and it's quite quaint really, I quite like Alsager. Station opened in 1848 with the line and hasn't always been called Alsager, it's also been called Alsager Road Heath, road spelled R-O-D-E. But yeah, the station hasn't seen too much in terms of, well, anything significant happening in its nearly 200-year life. It was electrified in 2003 when the West Coast Mainline had the modernisation plan along this section. It's a bit of a weird stretch of track this between Crewe and sort of Kidsgrove, Stoke-on-Trent, because it's a pretty small line, you know. This line only gets 2 trains an hour really in each direction. You know, this line isn't hugely vital, but at the same time it is. This line is a West Coast Mainline relief line. The busiest line in Europe relies on this little line in Staffordshire for when things get messed up between Stafford and Crewe. So in one sense this line isn't the most relevant line in terms of the fact that you probably don't know about Alsager station, but then it's also vitally important. Station here sees 2 trains an hour into Crewe and 2 trains an hour towards Stoke, provided by London North Western Railway and East Midlands Railway. So LNWR go between Crewe and Stafford once an hour, and EMR go between Crewe and Derby up towards Lincoln once an hour. So it gets a pretty good service. Now, one interesting fact about this station is that I don't actually know what platform it is. Platform 1 is much longer than platform 2, which I'm on. And that's because of the level crossing which is here. This station does have a level crossing, which makes it a pretty interesting one. But the level crossing, the signals for the trains to stop before the level crossing to make sure the barriers are down, are quite far up platform 1, which means that platform 1 has to be much longer because of the fact that trains don't actually use half of platform 1. So the main platform by the station building, trains don't stop there, they stop quite far up the platform. But it's worth noting that platform 2, I believe, was much longer but is now abandoned, so it only takes 4 carriages, I believe. Alsager as a town has around 20,000 people living in it, so it's not a huge town, but it's mid-importance, I guess. It's a mid-sized town, and it's pretty big in munitions. In World War II, lots of munitions factories set up. So that's where its population grew a lot because of workers from the munitions factory. It does still play a role in munitions. BAE Systems, they have a factory here, although I think it's a bit up in the air as to whether they will continue to be based here in Alsager or whether the site of their factory will be replaced by something else. I think it's a bit up in the air at the moment. I couldn't really find any concrete proof as to whether they're staying or not. Just after Alsager, coming in the opposite direction, so you wouldn't ever be able to get a train from Alsager to this line. There used to be the line to Kiel, which closed in 1967. There are a few old stations along this line, including Radway Green, which was a former station just before Alsager on the line between Crewe and Alsager, which closed in 1966. It was by level crossing. I think the old station building still survives, but the station does not. And the station is the 1,693rd busiest, with 115,000 entries and exits. And during COVID, it saw just 2 East Midlands trains a day, 2 EMR services a day because of cutbacks, and that was from mid-2020 until mid-2021. So within a year, East Midlands Railway only served the station by a handful of trains a day due to lack of crew, which is ironic because they serve crew. The station is pretty, I must say. I think the friends of this line, I think they're the friends of the North Staffordshire line, they do look after it quite well. There's like lots of nice flower beds and plants and things. It's very green here. It's a nice and pleasant station. There are these nice like rock embankments, which I believe cross-country trains help to fund. East Midlands Railway have also put in quite a bit of effort. They've updated the waiting rooms, which I was last here. They've put in new waiting shelters. And yeah, the station has a very pleasant feel to it. I must say, it's a nice station. It's a very nice place to come. I don't actually know if there's anything really in Alsager. It's not a huge town. I'm not really too sure. So it's about a 10-15 minute walk. Unfortunately, I can't get there before my next train, but I'm sure it's nice enough. Anyway, talking about my next train and the next station down the line, which is Kidsgrove. So let's go there. The barriers are actually coming down now.
This train is for Lincoln.
Right, hello, welcome to Kidsgrove station, which is probably my favourite station on the stretch between Crewe and Stoke-on-Trent. It is just a lovely, lovely station. First, let's crack on with some of the history, and then we can talk about how just pretty it is. Now, station is a pretty important station, as this marks the junction between the line from Stoke-on-Trent up towards Manchester Piccadilly and the line that we've been on, which branches off towards Crewe. So it sees a lot of trains and is a major junction point on this line and on the West Coast Mainline, on the Stoke and Manchester branch. It opened in 1848, originally known as Hare's Castle, being later renamed to Kidsgrove Central until 1966, when it became the last station serving the town. It's had a lot of names, including Harecastle Junction, Kidsgrove Junction, Harecastle, and then Harecastle for Kidsgrove. So it's basically gone through every single name you can think of. Previously, Kidsgrove had 3 stations, including Kidsgrove, Liverpool Road and Market Street, which were both on the Potteries Loop line, with this line closing in 1964. It basically skirted round Stoke-on-Trent, parallel to the current line today. The station has 4 platforms, which are sort of arranged in like a V-shape, converging at the Stoke-on-Trent end. The station is just north of the Trent and Mersey Canal, which has a trademark very bright orange gold colour, which is due to leaking iron ore from the local coal deposits, which sort of leak through Harecastle Tunnel, which is a famous canal tunnel, which the canal runs through, and that leaks and turns it into this really incredibly bright orange colour. The station was electrified here much earlier than the other stations along the line, because this section through to Manchester, which is platforms 1 and 2, was electrified in the 1960s, when the West Coast Mainline was electrified up to Manchester, and obviously the platforms over towards Crewe were electrified in the early 2000s. Northern serve here hourly between Stoke and Manchester, and then EMR and London North Western Railway both serve here on their services between Crewe and Lincoln, and between Crewe and Stafford respectively. The station has a full ticket office. I think it's the only station bar Crewe and Stoke to have a full ticket office, and it's currently going through a £13 million refurbishment. It was meant to be a much bigger refurbishment, which would see a completely new station building constructed and turn it into sort of an interchange with local bus services, but they found, I think it was sort of uneven land and something to do with coal mines underneath, or something to do with the land, that meant that they couldn't build that interchange. So instead, They're going through a major refurbishment of the current station building, with, I think, a new bike stores being built. It also has in recent years received lifts, so it is fully accessible as well, which we like to see. It has an incredible station garden, which I'm sort of sitting in. It's got this lovely old sign which says Kidsgrove Station on it. It's really well kept by the local Friends of the North Staffordshire line. It's a wonderful station, and it gets a very good service. It gets, 3 trains an hour in each direction, basically. 3 trains an hour towards Stoke, 3 trains an hour away from Stoke. So it is a really cool station, I would say. Come visit, sit here for half an hour. It's peaceful, it's nice, especially in summer. So I'd wholly recommend coming to Kidsgrove. As a place, Kidsgrove is mostly known for potteries and coal mining. General Electrics also had a drive and converter plant here until, I believe, 2016, when it closed and a few hundred people sadly lost their jobs. I would recommend visiting this station. It's very peaceful and quiet. And it's also a pretty interesting station, the way that it is sort of a V-shape junction station. It's a vitally important station. And you could also visit the canal, which is literally just down there. It's a cool place, and I would recommend it. For now, though, it's time to head on to the penultimate station in today's video of Longport, which is Staffordshire's least used railway station. Or is it? It is. But we'll get on to more as to why that's not 100% later. Oh, we're on a tilt. Hello, welcome to Longport Station. There is a train which is about to pass through. I wonder what it is. It's the Northern. Let me get you fixed up. The Longport Station is Staffordshire's least used station. It regained that title from Longton Station just outside Stoke-on-Trent in the last period. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. As with the others, the station opened in 1848. It was originally known as Burslem until 1873, when another station called Burslem opened much closer to the actual place of Burslem. So this Burslem was changed to Longport because there was another station at Burslem which was actually called Burslem, which was actually in Burslem. So the Burslem station which was here was not called Burslem anymore because another Burslem, anyway, easy, right? Another station opened nearby on the Potteries line, aforementioned already in this video. So this station was called Longport, even though there isn't really a place called Longport, it's just sort of the name of a general area. It more directly serves Middleport, which is actually advertised on the station signs. It says a light here for Middleport Pottery, which is a pottery centre which is a little way from here. Talking about pottery, this whole area is best known for its pottery, as we'll talk more about at our next station, Stoke-on-Trent, because Stoke and the whole area around here is very much known for its pottery industry. The most famous pottery works were the Price and Kensington teapot works. However, they have since closed and the building was part demolished in 2019 due to structural concerns. The station is the closest to Port Vale Football Club, which play in League 2. They just got relegated from League 1 in the last season. I've actually watched them play against Stockport in the 25-26 season. They actually won as well, surprisingly, because they didn't win many games that season. So they're around here. They're about a 20-minute walk, I think, or maybe half an hour, but not too far. So yeah, the station is currently the least used station. It shared that with Longton. Now in 23-24, Longton was the least used station with 64,000 passengers. That is on this line, the Crewe to Derby line, just after Stoke. However, those figures skyrocketed to 81,000 in the 24-25 period, whilst Longport's figures, although they went up from 76k to 79k from 23-24 to 24-25, that is of course less than Longton. I'm not entirely sure what's promoted Longton's rapid growth recently, maybe like a new housing development or something. maybe East Midlands Railway just being more reliable, or maybe the extension of services to Lincoln, I'm not sure. But something has caused a rapid passenger growth at Longton Station, which has meant that Longport has now reclaimed its title as the least used station in Staffordshire, which it held for quite a while before that. There's not much here. It has some very nice original station buildings, which are unfortunately not in railway use. It's very well kept, as with a lot of the stations on this line. The Friends of the North Staffordshire line do a great job at planting and keeping the flower beds very nice indeed. There is this new sort of like freight yard just in front of me, or just behind you, which wasn't here last time I came here, so that's completely new. It's the least served station out of any of the stations on this line. Northern and East Midlands Railway, usually their services pass straight through, so it just gets the hourly London North Western services between Stafford and Crewe. It does get a handful of East Midlands and Northern services in the peak, but these are literally a handful, like 1 or 2 trains a day from East Midlands and about 3 or 4 from Northern, so very, very scarce. So the majority of services operated by London North Western Railway. Apart from that, there's not much here, so let's go to the next and final station in today's video of Stoke-on-Trent. But before we do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about a station which closed as recently as 2005 between here at Longport and Stoke-on-Trent, which is Etruria station.
This station had a single island platform just north of Stoke on the A53. By the late 1990s, its services had been reduced to just a few peak services only, and by 2003 it had just 2 trains a day and a rail replacement bus by Central Trains, with all trains being provided by First North Western between Manchester and Stoke. During this period, the West Coast Mainline was going through a period of modernisation, and during this overhaul, the decision was made to reduce the bottleneck around Stoke and to close Etruria station, with the Strategic Rail Authority granting closure on the 21st of July 2005. With Friday, September the 30th, 2005, seeing the 0716 service to Manchester Piccadilly call at Etruria station for the last time, with all remains of the station being gone by 2008, bar the former bricked-up entrance. Interestingly, you can still read the reactions of rail enthusiasts at the time of the closure on Rail Forums UK. Many were angry, stating that if it had a better service, it might have had more passengers. We'll never know the answer to that. Well, we might have if a bid to reopen the station in 2020 was successful, but sadly it was not. Anyway, now it's time to leave Longport and head on to the last station in today's video of Stoke-on-Trent.
Hello, welcome to the final station in today's video of Stoke-on-Trent. Now, this is one of the busiest stations in Staffordshire.
The next train to arrive at platform
This is going to be a problem. This station is a major calling point on the West Coast Mainline for trains like the one behind me, Avanti West Coast services, cross-country services also call through here, and so do East Midlands Railway and London North Western Railway. It's a junction between the West Coast Mainline through Stoke and the Crewe to Derby line, which I've been on, but this is as far as I'm going in today's video. The station sees over 3 million passengers per year, and it is very busy today on this Saturday that I'm filming. The station opened in October 1848, with the surrounding buildings around the station completed by June of the next year. The station was originally opened by the North Staffordshire Railway, and it's pretty rare as it features one of the only pieces of town planning conducted by a railway company. They basically completely built the outside of the station by scratch, planning it with several buildings, including the station hotel, completed around the sort of forecourt of the main station building entrance. Now, the buildings around the station are known as Winton Square. The station has 3 platforms and are covered by a really cool train shed. Platform 1 is platform south and eastbound. Platform 2 is a platform for northbound and westbound services. And platform 3 is the bay platform for northern services north towards Manchester. There was a running track which ran alongside platform 1, so southbound. However, this was removed when the West Coast Mainline was modernised in 2008, whilst the platforms were lengthened for the lengthened Pendolino trains. The station used to have many more lines running from it, including the aforementioned Potteries line and other smaller freight-only lines to local quarries. The station sees at least 2 trains an hour off-peak towards London Euston. Cross country also serve here, 1 train an hour towards Bournemouth and 1 train towards Bristol. London North Western serve here on their hourly Stafford to Crewe service, and East Midlands Railway, of course, serve here too. It sees around 5 trains an hour off-peak towards Manchester Piccadilly, so it's definitely not a bad service here at Stoke. The station has quite a lot of cool statues, including a statue by Vincent Warapay called Hand with Kronos, which was commissioned in 1990 by the National Garden Festival for British Rail. Another statue just outside the station of Josiah Wedgwood, and he holds a Portland vase, which he held as proof that Britain could finally make pottery as good as the Romans could. And that statue was built by Edward Davis. Stoke is, of course, known for its pottery, and the name Stoke itself, its full name is Stoke-on-Trent. Stoke, in Latin, well, it means a lot of things, but it basically just means a place. So Stoke-on-Trent basically is just a place on the River Trent, which I guess it is, so correct definition, I guess. Now, the Staffordshire potteries became the centre of pottery making in the UK, and some of it does still survive to this day, but a lot of the pottery factories have since closed due to deindustrialisation. Stoke is also known for its coal mining industry, which mostly ceased in 1994, also known for its iron and steel industries. Steel was produced until 1978, and rolling steel billets were being constructed until 2002. Michelin, the tyre manufacturer, has had a presence in the city since the 1920s and still employs around 500 to 1,000 people to this day. It is the largest town in Staffordshire, beating Stafford, with over 260,000 people calling Stoke-on-Trent home. It's had a lot of investment recently. You can see those buildings behind me are new. It's also home to the University of Staffordshire. Just outside the station, I've seen a lot of work with, I think it's turned into a bus lane. It's been sort of gentrified, I guess. It's had, a lot of work done outside the station, and it is quite a nice place. I think the city centre is actually quite far from Stoke-on-Trent. Stoke's sort of a mess of like a lot of different villages and towns joined into one place. So I don't actually know where the main city centre is. I've never really been because I think it's a little walk from the station. But yes, that is Stoke-on-Trent, and that is the Crewe to Stoke line on the Crewe to Derby line. I do one day want to do the rest of the stations between here at Stoke down to Crewe. You might say, well, if you know the line, you might say there's only one station, Stone. That is technically true, but there are also 2 mothball stations which still get a rail replacement bus service, which I want to tick off. So that might be for a future video. The line over to Derby continues through Longton and Uttoxeter and then down to Derby. Not sure if I'll be doing that anytime soon. I've never been down that line, so maybe that's one to tick off in the future. Hope you have enjoyed this video though. If so, do smash like, smash subscribe, check out my Discord server, Twitter and Blue Sky in the links in the description below. Thanks to my YouTube and Patreon members, as always, for making videos like this one possible, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
And a huge thanks to my YouTube and Patreon members, including first class members Aaron Barry, Crispin McKee, JBNEL, Phil Smith and Tom Kennedy. My business zone members Andrew Bowen, Anthony Harris, Anthony James Moore, ARK, BK Gary, Connor Gregg, Clive's Travelling Trains, Craig Mitchell 43, Daniel Burford, Dave CDF, Henry Joy, Jay Teco, Galia Lev, Martin Thomas, MJTE, Ollie D, OVTUG Alex, Pete Denton, Real, SZWL, Train Life GB, Tom Kennedy, Will Ho and Zach Renfrey, as well as my standard premium and standard class members. You can get your name on this list from as little as £2.99 a month, or support me from as little as 99p a month. All your support means the world to me and helps make videos like this one possible, so I really do appreciate all of your incredible support. Thank you, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.